Welcome to Ludical Connections, where we dive into the complexities of relationships, personal growth, and emotional well-being. Today, we're tackling a topic that many people find difficult to navigate: toxic family relationships. While family is often viewed as a source of support, love, and care, that isn't always the case. For some people, their closest relatives can become sources of emotional pain, manipulation, and conflict. When a family relationship becomes toxic, it can be hard to know what to do, especially when there are expectations around familial loyalty, cultural norms, or guilt. In this video, we'll explore what toxic family dynamics look like, why they happen, and most importantly, how you can protect your mental and emotional well-being in the face of these difficult situations. To start, let's define what we mean by toxic family relationships. Toxicity in a relationship occurs when one or more individuals consistently engage in harmful, manipulative, or abusive behaviors that damage the emotional, mental, or physical well-being of others. In the context of a family, this can look like constant criticism, emotional manipulation, passive-aggressive behavior, neglect, verbal or even physical abuse, and a lack of respect for boundaries. Toxic family members may try to control you, invalidate your feelings, or undermine your sense of self-worth. The key here is that these behaviors aren't just occasional disagreements or misunderstandings. Everyone has moments of tension with their family. Toxic behaviors are chronic patterns that create an unhealthy and harmful environment over time. One of the hardest parts about identifying a toxic family dynamic is that it can be difficult to recognize when you're in the middle of it. Family relationships often come with deep emotional ties, shared history, and a sense of obligation. We may feel guilty or disloyal if we even entertain the idea that a family member could be harmful to us. But just because someone is family doesn't mean they're entitled to treat you poorly. In fact, the closeness of family relationships can sometimes make toxic dynamics even more damaging. When the people who are supposed to care for us cause harm, it can be especially confusing and painful. There are many reasons why family relationships become toxic. In some cases, a family member may have their own unresolved emotional trauma or mental health issues that manifest as toxic behavior. Generational patterns can also play a role. If unhealthy behavior has been passed down from one generation to the next, it can be difficult to break the cycle. Additionally, cultural expectations about family loyalty can make it hard to speak out or set boundaries, particularly if you come from a background where family is seen as the most important unit above all else. Whatever the reason, it's important to recognize that you have a right to protect yourself and set boundaries, even with family members. So how do you know when a family relationship has crossed the line into toxicity? One of the key signs is that the relationship consistently makes you feel worse about yourself. If interactions with a family member leave you feeling drained, anxious, or inadequate, this is a major red flag. Another sign is constant criticism or judgment. A toxic family member might belittle your choices, question your abilities, or undermine your accomplishments. They may never seem satisfied with who you are or what you do, which can lead to feelings of shame and self-doubt. Manipulation is another common trait. Toxic family members often use guilt trips, emotional blackmail, or passive-aggressive behavior to get their way. They may make you feel responsible for their emotions or actions, leaving you feeling trapped in a cycle of trying to please them. One of the most important things you can do when faced with a toxic family member is to set clear boundaries. Boundaries are essential for protecting your emotional and mental well-being. However, setting boundaries with family can be incredibly challenging, especially if they're used to crossing them. When establishing boundaries, it's important to be clear and consistent about what is and isn't acceptable. For example, if a family member is constantly criticizing you, you might say, "I'm not comfortable with how you're speaking to me. If this continues, I will have to end this conversation." While it may be difficult at first, enforcing boundaries shows that you value yourself and your well-being, and it can also signal to the toxic person that their behavior is unacceptable. It's important to note that setting boundaries doesn't always mean cutting someone out of your life entirely, although that may be necessary in extreme cases. Sometimes, boundaries can involve limiting the amount of time you spend with a toxic family member, avoiding certain topics of conversation, or reducing contact to maintain your peace. For example, you might choose to only see this person during larger family gatherings, rather than one-on-one situations where their behavior is more likely to be harmful. Every situation is unique, and the boundaries you set should reflect what you need to feel safe and respected. If a toxic family member continues to violate your boundaries, it may be necessary to consider going no contact. This is a difficult decision, and one that should not be taken lightly, but in some cases, cutting ties is the healthiest option. If someone's behavior is consistently abusive, manipulative, or harmful, and they show no willingness to change or respect your boundaries, removing them from your life may be the best way to protect yourself. It's important to remember that you are not obligated to maintain a relationship with someone who is damaging to your well-being, even if they're family. When considering going no contact, it's helpful to seek support from a therapist, counselor, or trusted friend. This can provide you with the guidance and emotional support you need to navigate this difficult decision. Cutting off a family member can bring up feelings of guilt, sadness, or even fear about how the rest of the family will react. It's important to give yourself permission to prioritize your own well-being over societal or familial expectations. Just because someone shares your bloodline doesn't mean they have the right to harm you emotionally or otherwise. It's also crucial to build a support network outside of the toxic family dynamic. Surrounding yourself with people who uplift and support you can help counterbalance the negativity that a toxic family member brings into your life. These could be friends, colleagues, a partner, or even extended family members who respect your boundaries and provide emotional support. Having a strong support system can make it easier to cope with the challenges of dealing with toxic family dynamics and provide a sense of validation and encouragement when setting and enforcing boundaries. One of the most difficult aspects of toxic family relationships is that they often involve long-standing emotional patterns that can be hard to break free from. It's not uncommon for people to feel trapped in the role they've always played within the family dynamic, whether that's the peacekeeper, the caregiver, or even the scapegoat. Recognizing these patterns is an important step toward breaking free from them. It's okay to redefine your role within the family and to prioritize your own emotional health. In some cases, you may be able to address the toxic behavior directly with the family member. This can be a tricky conversation, and it's important to approach it with empathy and clarity. Instead of accusing or blaming, try to focus on how their behavior makes you feel and what changes you need to see. For example, you could say, "When you make negative comments about my choices, I feel hurt and unsupported. I'd like to have a relationship where we can communicate more positively." It's possible that the family member is unaware of the impact of their behavior and may be open to changing, but it's also important to be prepared for the possibility that they may not respond well. If you do attempt to have a conversation about the toxic behavior, having clear boundaries and expectations in place will help you navigate the conversation more effectively. If the person refuses to acknowledge or change their behavior, you may need to limit contact or distance yourself further. Remember, you cannot change someone else's behavior. You can only control how you respond and how you protect yourself. In conclusion, dealing with toxic family relationships is incredibly challenging, but it's important to remember that you have the right to protect your well-being. Whether that involves setting boundaries, limiting contact, or going no contact, the most important thing is to prioritize your emotional and mental health. Family relationships can be complex, but no one deserves to be in a relationship that consistently causes harm. Thank you for watching Ludical Connections, and if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might benefit from this information. Stay tuned for more content on relationships, personal growth, and emotional well-being.